Imagine sitting in a quiet diner when suddenly a spoiled rich heir kicks a dog for no reason. The diners freeze. But what happens next is far from ordinary. The heir thinks he can get away with it, but little does he know he's about to learn a painful lesson he'll never forget. Stay tuned. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The diner was alive with the sounds of sizzling grills and the low hum of chatter. The smell of fresh coffee and greasy burgers filled the air, creating a cozy, almost nostalgic atmosphere. A handful of regulars sat at the counter, sipping on their drinks, while a few new faces tried to get comfortable in the vinyl booths. Everything seemed normal until the door swung open. In walked a young man, his swagger unmistakable. Dressed in a crisp designer suit, he had an air of arrogance that seemed to fill the room. His eyes scanned the diner, dismissing everyone as if they were beneath him. The other patrons didn't pay much attention, but there was something about his presence that rubbed them the wrong way. He walked straight to the counter, his polished shoes clicking on the black and white checkered floor. At one of the tables, a German shepherd lay under the seat of its owner, calm and collected. The dog's eyes, though alert, remained unfazed by the newcomer until the heir made his move. The rich heir, still full of his confidence, strutted over to the counter, glancing around as if everyone in the diner should be paying attention to him. He adjusted his collar, looking at the German shepherd resting under the table. Without a second thought, he nudged the dog's side with the tip of his polished shoe. A sharp kick that sent a jolt through the animal. The dog's ears twitched. A low growl rumbled deep in its chest. But it wasn't the dog's reaction that caught everyone's attention. It was the calm, focused gaze of the man sitting at the corner booth, watching the scene unfold. His eyes never left the air, his posture stiffening, a sudden shift in the air. The man was calm, too calm. He stood up slowly, his uniform shifting slightly under the movement, revealing a badge that no one in the diner had noticed before. The rich heir didn't see it, too busy laughing off his power move against a harmless dog. He didn't realize that the man sitting in the corner wasn't just another diner, he was a Navy SEAL. And that dog wasn't just any pet. The heir turned his back, still grinning. But the SEAL wasn't about to let it slide. His voice, when he finally spoke, was low, firm, and commanding. "Don't touch my dog?" The heir paused, the smile fading as he sensed something wasn't right. But he was too arrogant to understand the gravity of the situation. The heir's grin quickly faltered as he noticed the tone in the SEAL's voice. The room had gone eerily quiet, as if everyone was waiting for something to snap. The man in front of him was no ordinary diner guest. There was a certain intensity in his eyes, a quiet authority that couldn't be ignored. But the rich heir wasn't ready to back down. He scoffed, rolling his eyes, and gave a dismissive shrug. "Are you seriously getting worked up over a dog? It's just a mutt." His words were laced with arrogance, but there was a subtle nervousness behind them. That's when the heir did what most spoiled rich kids do. When they think they're untouchable, he pulled out his phone. "Dad's going to hear about this. You're going to regret messing with me." He hit speed dial, his fingers tapping rapidly, clearly eager to show who was in control. Moments later, the diner's door opened again, and in walked a tall, imposing figure, his father. Dressed in a designer suit that screamed wealth, he strode toward the counter, eyes scanning the room until they landed on his son, still seething. Without a word, he walked up to the SEAL, his voice dripping with condescension. "You need to step aside. My son doesn't deserve this." The heir's father stood tall, his presence commanding. He looked the SEAL up and down, sizing him up with a dismissive glance. "I suggest you walk away before things get out of hand," he said, his voice smooth, oozing authority. The rich heir, standing beside his father, had an arrogant grin on his face, believing his father's influence would put an end to everything. But the SEAL didn't flinch. Instead, his eyes narrowed and he took a slow step forward. He wasn't intimidated by wealth or status, something the heir had clearly underestimated. "You really don't know who you're dealing with, do you?" The SEAL said, his voice steady, almost eerily calm, before the heir's father could respond. The seal reached into his jacket, pulling out a small ID card just enough to reveal the truth. His uniform shifted slightly, and the heir's father's eyes locked onto the insignia of a Navy SEAL. The room fell silent. As people began to realize the magnitude of the situation, the heir's father blinked in disbelief, his smug expression faltering. The power dynamics in the room had shifted. This doesn't change anything," the father stammered. But the weight of the SEAL's presence was undeniable. The tension in the diner had barely settled when the police arrived, flashing lights cutting through the calm afternoon. The rich heir and his father, confident in their wealth and connections, watched with satisfaction as the officers stepped in. The heir's father, now on the phone with his lawyer, knew exactly what to say. They would get this handled quickly, efficiently, with their status protecting them. But things weren't going as they expected. When the SEAL was escorted to the police station, it was clear that the situation wasn't just about a kicked dog anymore. The officers, who initially had no idea who the SEAL was, began to sense something wasn't quite right. As the rich heir's father demanded action, he still hadn't realized the gravity of the SEAL's influence. "My son deserves an apology," the father insisted, pacing the room. "This is absurd. Get him arrested." But before the police could even take action, the phone rang. A senior officer, his expression suddenly serious, answered it with urgency. The conversation was brief, but what he heard changed everything. Moments later, the station doors flew open, and in walked a group of Navy personnel, their uniforms sharp and their presence commanding. The heir's father's face drained of color. The officers stood straighter, their posture changing immediately. The air in the room shifted as everyone realized the situation was far more complicated than they'd imagined. The Navy had arrived, and it wasn't just any Navy, it was the Navy. SEALs. The police station had transformed from a place of authority to one of tension and uncertainty. The heir's father, who once thought his wealth could handle any situation, now found himself flanked by Navy officers who seemed to exude power with every step. The senior officer who had answered the phone earlier walked up to him, his face stiff. "Sir, I believe we need to have a conversation." The father's usual confidence had drained away, replaced with confusion. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice shaky. "My son was attacked? This man should be arrested, not honored." But the Navy officers stood firm, their loyalty clear. The heir's father could only stare as the SEAL, calm and unwavering, explained his side of the story. "I didn't want trouble," he said simply, "but no one hurts my dog. And I'm not someone you can push around." In the end, the heir and his father were forced to apologize not just to the Navy SEAL, but to everyone in that diner, to every person who had witnessed their arrogance and entitlement. The father, still reeling from the shock, muttered something about the incident being a misunderstanding, but the SEAL wasn't interested in excuses. As they left, the heir's father finally understood. Money could buy many things, but it couldn't buy respect. What do you think? Did the rich heir and his father get what they deserved? Would you have handled the situation differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button, share with your friends, and subscribe to stay up to date with more incredible tales like this one. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest videos. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the most unexpected heroes can make the biggest impact. See you in the next one.